And then, Luke chapter 23. I realize that when you get to the cross, you do not get a ladder story. But when you get to the cross, you need a ladder. And what I mean by that is the cross is the ascendant peak of Christianity, not heaven. We like to think heaven is the peak. That's where we're going. Heaven can be a destination. Heaven can be you could talk about heaven as penetrating the earth or butted up next to the hell that you live in, whatever. But the cross is the apex place of Christianity. It's the hill that is climbed so that we enter into the death with God, with Jesus at Calvary. That's the cross. So it becomes the peak. Let me say this again. Heaven is not the peak of Christianity. The cross of Jesus Christ is the peak of Christianity. Jesus said, if I be lifted up, I'll draw into myself. And I think he's saying, I'll draw judgment into myself. I think he's also saying, I'll draw. I draw from the pinnacle. Because you don't draw from beneath, but you draw from above. And where is his above? Calvary. And so Jesus puts the crossbeam on his shoulder and he walks up that hill. And he dies on that cross. And he dies in between two criminals. And you know the story. On one side, one man mocks Jesus, and on the other side, the man is sympathetic with Jesus. And maybe it's a type of all of us. I think it's actually a type of all of us. I think there are seasons of our lives where we mock him, where we shun him, where we turn away from him. I think there are seasons of our lives where we turn to him out of desperation. I do not believe that you're either one or the other of the criminals on the cross. I think you are both. You and I are both criminals on the cross. Just depends on what day you catch us. And Jesus turns in Luke chapter 23, verse 42, the man says to Jesus, Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus said to him, assuredly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. And this is the token appearance of this word in the New Testament, paradise. But it is not the token appearance of this word in the Greek Old Testament. It's just that Jesus is using a word that doesn't get rehashed again because it almost is as if it belongs to him. The Old Testament Hebrew word Eden is translated paradise. And when Jesus dies at Calvary and says to the criminal, today you shall be with me in paradise, we've often thought what Jesus meant was that today you get to go to heaven with me. And I don't doubt that wherever they went next, they went together. And you can call that place heaven or you can call that place paradise. But the reference is all the way back to the paradise garden of God as Jesus says to the criminal, today you and I get to go back into the garden that man has not been in since the beginning. Today you get to be with me in paradise. In other words, the door back into the heavens happens at the top of this ladder. Climb this ladder up to the cross, you get to go into paradise. And I think it's the same message that God delivers to Jacob in Genesis 28. As God looks down from the ladder at Jacob and says, I'm going to bless you where you are. And Jesus comes down the ladder in John 1 and says, I'm going to bless you where you are. And at Luke 23, Jesus invites all of us up to that cross to say, you want to know how to get to heaven? You want to know how to walk back into paradise? You walk back into paradise through the apex part of Christianity. What's the highest point of Christianity? The cross. Guys, what I just said to you is an absolute and total, utter paradox of nonsense. The apex of Christianity is death on a cross. Who founds anything worth founding on the death of an execution? You would think our faith would be built on his victory. Our faith would be built on him overthrowing an empire. Our faith would be built on his power. But our faith is built on his death. See, you are climbing a ladder. It's just not a ladder of your success, your perseverance, your fasting, your giving. You're climbing straight up onto that cross with Jesus. That's the only climb you need. Taking the old you and depositing into who He is. Letting Jesus, He who dies on that cross, engulf and take in all that you are. Not only are we climbing that ladder onto His death, quite frankly, Jesus is the ladder we're climbing. Jesus is the step, the rung that we walk up. If you have a theology of ladder climbing Christianity, what that really means is that you believe that there's a God somewhere who's beckoning you onward through your performance and your perseverance and your faithfulness. And as long as that's the way that you view God, there is a permanent degree of separation between God and your next good work. And that separation is exacerbated by your next bad work. Because if you can go up a ladder, by God, you can go down one. And what happens is that theology morphs into climb through your performance, slip through your failures. Slip and fall away from His presence. And how many of you realize if that's where God is, if that's the distance between you and God, there's no permanent residence of God in your heart. There's no heaven on this earth. There's no God speaking promises into the land that you live on. The ladder that you climb is to simply step into where He is, in His death, in His burial, in His resurrection.